You probably have heard of product operations, but you're struggling to figure out what is the value that can bring you and your team. Today, I'm going to talk about a framework that I have put together to help you understand what are the principles of product operations and what are going to be the responsibilities to help you understand better how setting these operations is going to help you and your team to really be able to build products at scale. So if you think about the vision of product operations, it's basically that you want to optimize your product engine, you want to optimize your product development process, and from the business point of view, you want to reduce the waste that your product teams are potentially incurring into and create as much business impact as possible. And in order to do this, I have defined 4 principles. And the principles are basically the areas which are always true for product operations. So the first one is product at scale, or building product at scale. What do you want to do, or what do I mean by this? Basically that you want to drive faster and smoother and more predictable product development, and also launch cycles. One of the problems that many companies have is that, first of all, many steps of the process are going to be missing. Sometimes discovery is not done. Sometimes discovery is done very well, but maybe then prioritization is not done very well. And then planning potentially is not done well either. There's very little information, and really nobody knows what we want to build. So being able to have a reliable process that I can always lean back on is going to help me really make sure that I'm getting all the context that is necessary to build products, to create a product development process. And as part of this, of course, what you're trying to do is reduce waste, because one of the biggest problems that companies have is that their efforts are not aligned with their strategies, they are not aligned with the goals of the product, the goals of the company, and there's a mismatch. And then a ton of effort is put into creating new opportunities, new features in the product that realistically are not adding value. The second part of this framework for me, and probably one of the most critical ones, is alignment. What you want to do here again is that you want to ensure that everybody understands what is coming in the product, that there is an understanding of what are the metrics, what are the data points that we are getting, and how to interpret them, and what are the processes that we have. This is very, very important when you think about many different teams working together. And I'm not referring only to product development teams. I'm not talking only about R&D, engineering, with product teams, or with design teams. I'm talking about go-to-market teams as well. If not everybody is aligned, then you're going to fail. The third principle is facilitation. Product operations, one of the goals of product operations is to help others do their work. It is there to help product teams, engineering, design, in some cases also go-to-market teams really be able to focus on the work that they are doing, being able to really deliver that value to the customers by having all these processes and facilitating the occurrence of these processes in this company. In some cases, this is going to be setting up tools. Sometimes it's going to be facilitating workshops, and sometimes it's going to be creating templates or doing training for the people that are involved in this process or in these operations. Then the fourth principle is to build feedback loops. There's never a perfect process. There's never a perfect set of operations. So it's very important that the operations teams are able to systematically gather, analyze, disseminate all the information, feedback that they are receiving in whatever manner it is, and that this is something that is being adopted in the product life cycle. So those are the principles of product operations: product scale, building and growing teams, alignment, making sure that they can work together, that they take into account the different points of view, the different needs, facilitation, making sure that they are able to do all the steps of the operations, and building the feedback loops. So iteration, learning, and continuous improvement and process improvement is something that is happening all the time. The next stage of this framework is to define what are going to be the responsibilities of product operations. So the first one that comes to mind is product lifecycle governance, which, as you can imagine, that's going to be probably what most of the people understand as product operations. So being able to standardize and optimize the product development lifecycle, which is a very common thing, define those processes, making sure that the steps that need to happen. This doesn't mean that it had to be a very stiff process. It can be a very agile process. But in some cases, the problem is that there's no process and things just happen because they just had to put a plan together. They just go and do it without really having a plan or an understanding that they had to first go through all the feedback, they had to prioritize, they had to really plan it, and not just, hey, we need a roadmap done for tomorrow, which is what happens very often in companies. Maybe it's not for tomorrow, but maybe it's for next week. That is a very common occurrence, unfortunately. The next step of product operations is going to be the tooling and tech stack management. So why this is important is that, as always, there has to be certain processes that companies or teams follow. It's like daily stand-ups. Teams do that in order to really understand what are the dependencies of work, what work has been done, what they're going to be doing, where are the dependencies. This is something that is critical for them to know. That's a process that is set up usually by a Scrum Master or an Agile coach, whatever the name it is nowadays. Similarly, you need the same for product operations. You had to define those stages, you had to understand what is the process, and from there are the tools. Unfortunately, many people, of course the tools do this, the tools say that if you take a tool, then you have product operations, but this is not true. No tool ever is going to solve all the product operations requirements. They are going to get to a level, but there's things that you had to do on your own. No matter how good the tool is, there's not a single tool that covers everything. And as part of this, of course, they are going to focus on understanding which are the best options for tools and if they need customization to really support their processes as much as possible. The next one is going to be data and insights enablement. They don't necessarily have to define all the KPIs or OKRs, but they had to be there to help teams defining those ones and bringing that visibility to a wider audience. So R&D or product teams might be caring, of course, about a certain KPI, certain OKRs that they want to track. What product operations wants to do is to bring that visibility on those OKRs, those KPIs, to a wider audience. So, for example, the rest of the product team, the rest of the engineering team, the sales teams, potentially and especially management teams, who sometimes don't have very good visibility on certain of those KPIs. And sometimes it's the other way around. Maybe management team has good visibility, but then the product teams don't have the visibility. The next responsibility is going to be the voice of the customer's integration. So they had to be able to help teams have systematic ways or channels of gathering and synthesizing and really processing all that information that they're getting from the different customers. Many times product management is not great at doing this. Oftentimes when they go into prioritization, many different sources are lost because there's not a process, and usually product managers don't think about how to create a process. So requests can come in the form of emails, of online communities, in support cases, sales emails, sales calls, sometimes marketing requests. It can come from engineering. They can come in so many different ways and in so many different formats. I've seen things like from email to Excel, Excel, PowerPoint, a little bit better than Excel maybe, and other ways of really bringing that input on what those requests are. So being able to set up that process, making there is a flow to receive those insights is going to be very key for the companies to really have a proper understanding of what the needs are. And of course, you don't work only with the insights that are coming from your customers. There are insights also coming internally. There are ideas that come from internal personal or stakeholders like management or some other product manager or a product manager themselves or a product designer. They might have great ideas of where the product could be going in the future and whether it is or not aligned to those strategic goals. The fifth responsibility is going to be go-to-market and internal enablement. So this is not something that always happens. In some cases, product operations is very focused on just product management, product design, and engineering. In some other cases, they can include other teams like data engineering, other adjacent teams to R&D. But in other occasions, especially in the companies I work for, I always taking also into this process the rest of the go-to-market teams. How you bring product marketing or marketing, how do you bring also sales into this process? Because then you will end up with real product teams. Not just the product teams that build the product, but the product teams that really are responsible for the success of the product, from the planning phase to the design phase to the execution engineering phase to the promotion to the sales and to the support and to maybe even the adoption if you think about solution engineers or services teams. So wanting to bring those teams together to really have common goals and not goals that are completely separated and that are different from each other, that's gonna fail the process, or that's gonna be a failure of product operations. And that's gonna be a failure of the business, not just of product operations. And finally, the sixth responsibility is going to be continuous learning. This is something that it depends on the company, is going to be different. In some companies where product operations is more just focusing on the processes, it might be that this continuous learning is to learn how to improve the processes over time, how to start small, grow, improve all the processes bit by bit, and not trying to build a perfect process because, well, that never happens. You always want to go step by step. But in other cases, I think that part of the product operations is not just teaching about your process, it's also helping the teams to acquire new skills and to acquire new knowledge. So think about product operations also being a little bit of a coaching platform for product management, for example, or for product design. In some cases, the product operation people are going to be very experts in these areas and they're going to be able to help others develop. In other cases, what they are going to do is promote communities and promote people to share knowledge with each other and promote to really try to level up the standards and level up the ways of working in the company. This is why product operations is very important, and product operations is going to help level up or raise the bar of knowledge and skills that those teams are having. And when you think about product operations, it's not just raising the bar of skills. In the end, what you want to do is raise the bar of how we are doing product in the company or product development. Basically, what you want to do is that when you have many different teams, when you have many different people, skills are very different, ways of working are very different. There are going to be gaps. So what product operations wants to do is to close those gaps and make sure that you are leveling up the way of working to make sure that as much as possible you are reducing waste and you are improving the potential for business impact for all the developments that you are doing. As I said earlier, I work in many companies. I have been a product leader since 2017, and part of my work has always been driving product operations. Why? Because generally I work in companies that they were not large enough to have product operations teams. So not only myself, because usually it doesn't happen in a niche or in a, only one person, but with other people really step up and really build those operations for the teams to really be more successful, to be more driven, to really have more clarity, not just for themselves, but also for other teams. So also helping sales and helping marketing to really gain that clarity and start aligning on the goals that they have. Based on this, I have put a program together on how I done product operations in other companies. If you are interested and you want to really start leveling up the way that your product teams in your company are working, go check it out. there's a link in the description. This is not the end of this framework. I'm still building it, and from here it's going to get more complex. I'm thinking about how to build a flow of Pro Operations and what could be the stages that are defined or what is needed in each one of those different stages. Going through things like tools, going through things like processes, and making it more understandable for somebody that is trying to set up a Pro Operations process in their company to really have a blueprint for them to start working with. So that's something that I'm working with. I will come back to that in future videos. But I would like to ask one thing from you. If you have feedback on this current framework, if you think that I might be missing something or that you are doing something slightly different, this is a good time to give me feedback, because as I said, nobody's perfect and we might forget something, and there might be something that when I was building this, potentially I missed. So if you have some suggestions, please use the comments below and let me know. If you enjoyed the video, please give a like and subscribe to the channel. Watch this video next if you want to learn more about Pro Operations. See you in the next one.